As entrepreneurs, there's a reason why we decided to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to tell the stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. On today's podcast, I'm speaking with Wayne Mullins. Hey, Wayne, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it because you have this really interesting mix of topics we're going to talk about. And the first one is marketing and your specific version of marketing, which has some psychological basis to it. So I always nerd out and love that sort of thing. But you also have seen a lot in the background. We're going to some of the leadership things that you've learned as well. But I first wanted to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm excited for this chat. And as we were chatting ahead of time, there's so many similarities between what you do and what we do. So it's going to be a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I always ask guests this, especially ones, I've had a couple of guests too in the supplement industry. I've got a couple of guests in the marketing industry, and these industries where there's a lot of different players involved. I always like to ask, what specifically makes you stand out in the marketing world? What's your kind of unique, special ninja skill that you're good at? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So two different things. One's going to be tactical. The other one's kind of bigger picture. So number one, the thing that we are so great at, it's helping people understand why their marketing isn't working. So we live in this world, Andrew, where there's so many things that entrepreneurs, business owners can do with their marketing, right? There's so many channels, so many possible things to do that we start doing all of these things. And then we get frustrated because we don't know what's working or what isn't working. And that is because we have not taken the time to put a strategy in place, right? We're doing a bunch of tactical things, and we mistakenly think that all of these tactics put together equal a strategy, but they don't, right? It's just a bunch of tactics thrown together, mixed in a bag. And, it's kind of like, you think about it, if we were going to go on a picnic and we were just going in the pantry and just dump a bunch of stuff in a bag, we've got a bunch of stuff in there that we can eat, but that's not going to make for a great experience when we get there. However, if we think about it ahead of time, if we plan a little bit ahead of time, we will be selective in what we grab and what we put in the picnic basket so that when we get there, we will have an amazing experience. The food will be on point and it changes everything. And that's the same thing with our marketing.
That reminds me so much, it's the difference between a picnic that includes a gourmet meal or something considered bachelor chow. That's kind of a difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
I resonate a lot with that because for me, marketing was always one of those, let's try this one thing. Let's try this one thing. As entrepreneurs all are very badly ADHD, kind of going in 17 directions at once and stepping back, trying to get in one direction, but not doing it the right way. It's like trying to build the house with a hammer and no idea what the hell you're doing. So I think, for you, you're more the architect side of things where it's like, let's start looking at how to make all of this stuff work together. Now, in marketing specifically, I heard this said once, and I kind of wanted to pass it by you because you're a lot smarter about this sort of thing than I am. And I heard like there are specialists in each like of the platforms. So Instagram, there's people that specialize in Instagram. There's people that specialize in YouTube. I see I see why they do that because, things change consistently. Every platform has its own personality. Every platform has its own different way of doing things. As far as doing a strategy, is this like, do you hire a bunch of people that have like, I have my Instagram guy, my Facebook guy, I've got my, YouTube guy, I got my LinkedIn guy or girl. Is that something that you do, or is it, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you're spot on. Each platform is so unique now, and the way they function, what works on certain platforms is different. So for us, and again, I can't speak for how other agencies do it, we have experts in each of these different areas. So I can't be the expert in all the things, right? First of all, I don't have the time. Second of all, I'm not interested in all the different platforms.
Yeah.
So it is important to understand that you are working with someone who is skilled in that area, right? They're an expert in that particular thing. But above that goes back to this idea of strategy. You can hire an expert in, let's say, Instagram, who's doing stuff on Instagram. You could hire another expert on YouTube. But if there's not a cohesive strategy between these two things that are taking place, you're still probably going to end up frustrated by the lack of results because these channels, although they're very different, there's ways to bridge between these, right? There's ways to bring people through your marketing funnel, your sales funnel, but that can only happen when we're strategic with them.
Exactly. Now, I think there's something that happens with folks who, especially if they're first starting out, they're what I call the chief everything officer. Then a lot of people are in that situation where we don't have teams behind us. How does a strategy look to somebody like that, especially somebody who's so far in the weeds, just trying to, get things up and going, just trying to do it? Talk to those people specifically about strategy and some of the what they're why it's a benefit for them. Like, how do you even start with this? Like, what are some signs if I'm just trying to just throw things at a wall and see what sticks and it's just not working and not going on? Like you're saying, the reasons why your beautiful website isn't converting, or reasons why you're trying this on Instagram and it's not working. What are some of the questions you would ask those people to get them in a direction of, you need to start a strategy and here's a place to start, just somewhere to go to?
Yeah, brilliant question. And here's why. You explained it spot on, in that so many entrepreneurs struggle with this and they don't know what to do. So, in light of doing nothing, the way we're wired is to go do something else. So, if we're not happy with the results we're getting on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, we say, oh, let me go try some email newsletter stuff. Let me go try this. So, we just keep piling more stuff on. And the reality is, when you have a strategy, you can actually remove a lot of stuff. So, the place I love to start is this: that there's a misconception about what marketing actually is. Most people use the word marketing and advertising interchangeably, and they're not the exact same thing. Advertising is merely a piece or a component of your marketing. So that's step number one, because we can't have meaningful conversations around something until we agree on how we're going to define these terms. Like, what do they actually mean? Because I could talk all day about marketing, but you're thinking specifically advertising, we're not going to get very far. So here's how we love to define marketing. Marketing is your ability to attract and to keep a customer. That is it. That is our definition of marketing. Now, when we peel that back another layer, we go deeper into that. Marketing, at the end of the day, boils down to two ingredients: psychology and math. That is it. Psychology, because marketing's job is to make sales unnecessary. What does that mean? That means this: that when your marketing is dialed in and it's strategic and it's done correctly, you don't have to pitch, you don't have to persuade, you don't have to convince, you don't have to do any of that stuff, because your marketing has done the heavy lifting for you. So psychology, because despite what we may think, the way that human beings make purchasing decisions hasn't changed much in the last 100 years. Yeah, there's different tools, there's different methods, but from a psychological perspective, it really hasn't changed that much. Number two, math, because we could go out and we could be very strategic with our marketing, but if we're not watching the dollars, then what happens is we don't know what's effective and what isn't. So that's the beginning of that conversation. And then there's some very practical things in terms of, here's exactly what to do. I don't know if we have time to dive into that, but there's some very practical things like start here, move here, move here.
Yeah, let's actually dive in for a little bit, because I'd like people to, especially folks that don't quite know how to do marketing or don't start, and I'm sure there's a lot of them. What are some of those tactical ways, there's ways that you can, like, what's that checklist look like?
Got it. I'm going to go high level and feel free
Sure.
to jump in and let's
Sure.
dive in specifics.
Yeah.
So when we think of marketing, we have to start. Let me use an analogy here. So think of an old circular clock hanging on the wall. So I grew up, I was in school in the 80s, back in the classroom, there was the big circular clock, 12 o'clock on the top, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you got the hour hand, minute hand. So at the 12 o'clock spot, we have out there what are called strangers. Strangers are everyone in the world who you think would be a good fit for your product or service, who specifically would receive more value from your product or service than from the money that they're going to part with, right? So in other words, in this value exchange, there's more value in this exchange for them and what they're going to benefit than there is for you. So we got to get crystal clear on who those people are. If you and I, Andrew, were to go into, let's say we started a business, we're going to go into the cattle business. We're going to raise cattle, and we're going to grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Now, I don't know, we didn't talk about this before, but do you eat meat?
Oh yeah.
All right. So you eat meat. But let's say we go into this business, what good would it do for us to promote our grass-fed beef to people who are vegetarians or vegans?
Not at all.
And yet, marketers Entrepreneurs do this day in and day out. They invest their money that they're working so hard for in putting their message in front of people who will never, ever like or buy what you have. So back to the clock real quick. 12 o'clock spot are the strangers. We got to get crystal clear on who those people are. Our first and only goal with marketing is to move them to the 3 o'clock spot. That is where they become friends. So we have to move these strangers into friends. There's 2 ingredients necessary. Number 1, they have to know about us, pretty obvious. Number 2, they have to like us. What does that mean? That's the example I just gave. Like, we could preach all day long to vegans and vegetarians about our amazing grass-fed beef. They're never going to like us. That's okay. Let's not waste our time there. Next, we have to move people from friends at 3 o'clock into customers at 6 o'clock. In one core ingredient that's needed here, that is trust. They must trust that they're going to receive more value. They must trust that we're going to deliver our product or service. They must trust that they're going to receive the benefit, or it's going to solve their problem with our product or service. Now, here's the thing, so fascinating. People do not trust you as an entrepreneur or as a marketer. They're skeptical about what you say. And the reason is this: they know that we have a vested interest. So if they don't trust us, who do they trust? Well, they trust other people. I mean, think about it. When's the last time you went on Amazon to buy something, Amazon.com to buy something? Could be a tube of toothpaste. You're going to scroll down to the section called reviews. Yeah. And you are going to trust the opinion and the words of complete strangers who could all be psychopaths, way more than you're going to trust the company, right? It's wired into us to be skeptical of the marketer. So when we move people from friends from 3 o'clock into customers, we have to learn to leverage other people's words about us, reviews, case studies, testimonials, referrals, references. All of those things need to be woven into our marketing strategy. And then I'll end super quick with this, not to spend much time here, but most marketers are done there, right? We think, okay, we've got the people to bring their, pull out their wallet, hand us money. We're done. Let's go find more strangers. Let's go through the process again. It's a huge mistake, huge mistake. We live in a world where 6.4 billion people have this device I'm holding up, which is a smartphone. That means 6.4 billion people have the ability in an instant to share their experience with us, with all of their friends, all of their family. And we as marketers, as entrepreneurs, don't spend enough time taking our customers from the 6 o'clock spot to the 9 o'clock spot, which is what we call evangelist. People who love your brand so much that they're willing to go tell other people about it. And I personally believe that if you want to cut through the noise, you want to cut through the clutter, that is where to focus your time. Focus your time and attention on turning your existing customers into evangelists. Let them do that work for you. And if they're truly evangelists, that means they would love to do that for you because they've received so much value.
Now, I want to pivot for a second and ask, how did you get into marketing? Like, how did you get into this?
So I absolutely love marketing. I love sales. My background is actually in selling. And what I learned about selling was that it's based on psychology. And as I started a company prior to this one, I transitioned from selling, going door to door, selling the services that we offered, to knowing that I could scale that through marketing. And that's what led me down this path. I grew that business, sold that company. But during the course of that time, started doing marketing consulting on the side.
Interesting. And was this always something you really loved to do? Always something that was a passion? You're like, I'm just going to go out and do this,
Yeah. It's so fun. Human psychology to me, and we talked a little bit about this before, it is so fascinating, and yet it is actually very predictable.
Yeah. And people are a lot more predictable than we think we are. Than the general consensus is that, if you have X stimulus, you will get Y result out of it. And sometimes those are surprising, but most of the time, like the common saying, we don't buy logically, we buy emotionally and use logic to validate our decision. Something that's very predictable. And no matter how much somebody says, I'm going in and reading all the reviews and I'm doing all of this information, there's more. You're doing it emotionally. There's something in there.
100%.
We're wired emotionally, and so it's a part of who we are. We can't really undo that. So I love that, man. Yeah. So now, The one thing I love to get into with the podcast, and it's the opening of the introduction is always there's a reason why as entrepreneurs we decided to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. There's a reason why we've decided to do this and why we've decided to go into it. Was this always were you always an entrepreneur, or did you do the corporate thing for a while and then kind of say nope out of that? What was that transition like for you? Like, is this something where I had one person say I started my first business at 12? You know, was that you, or what was that path like for you for to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So for me, I graduated from college, university, and took a corporate sales job. Spent 3 years in that career path,
Mm-hmm.
and since that time, I've been 100% on my own. So for the last almost, I guess, 20 years or so, been 100% on my own as an entrepreneur. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's wired or if it's innate or if it's something that is acquired, but here I am.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I've heard from a lot of other guests is that they always felt like something's wrong. Like this isn't the direction I need to be going. Like the traditional go to college, get a job, do your thing, like we've all been taught. They're like, something's weird here. I got something else going on. I think a really good example is my niece. She just turned 11. And when she was 9, she bought $2 worth of pipe cleaners, made them into pipe cleaner people, and made 15 bucks out of it. And it was just, to her, it made sense. It was just, I'm going to go do this. So I can tell this kid's going to be an entrepreneur when she's older. I'm getting ready for it.
Yeah.
Was that something that you did when you were younger, where it was just like, I'm going to go take this apart to see how it works. I'm going to go push this button and see what happens, or I'm going to go make this work, what did you have that sort of, in hindsight, did you have that entrepreneurial spirit in you?
I did. So the first memory I have of actually doing something entrepreneurial was probably when I was, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 11 in that range.
Uh-huh.
And for Christmas back then, baseball cards were a huge thing. I'd
Uh-huh.
gotten a bunch of baseball cards, and everyone else back then collected baseball cards, all my friends. And so they would want certain baseball cards, their favorite players, their favorite team, all that kind of stuff. And so what I would start doing is I would have them collect um, soda cans, tin
Mm-hmm.
cans,
Mm-hmm.
and I would basically buy those tin cans, bags of tin cans from them in exchange for baseball cards. I would then take the bags of tin cans and go sell them for money, because back then you could go recycle them and sell them and actually get a little bit of money. So that
Uh-huh.
was my first ever like memory of doing something business related, was bartering with business cards to make money by selling tin cans.
Awesome. So I think that is probably one of the most common experiences. Is there was we always kind of knew we were entrepreneurs and we were the black sheep of the family. I've used this analogy on other episodes, and I think it's really true. It's like we sit there, we think the world around us is like an orchestra playing out of tune, and everyone's going, nope, that's perfect, this is exactly how it should be, and we're sitting there going, the hell it is, something's wrong. This is not
Yep.
how I think.
Yep.
Like you said, going out and finding that novel way to be able to go out and make money. And I think that's something that we're all really good at. So it's that I wanted to ask that question because these stories always resonate with somebody, and so I want someone out there to be able to hear this story going, yeah, I was that kid too, and it makes now some sense. They may be in a corporate job they don't like, and now it makes some sense as to why that they think the way that they do, and they hear that, and that's the one moment that says, okay, I'm going to change this and change the trajectory of their life. So that's why I love to ask that question for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. So we were talking earlier about one of the things as a marketer that you get into is you see a lot of the inside of companies, like you see how they're working or not, and you see a lot of the leadership part of things. Talk to me a little bit about what leadership is, and what let's tie that back to marketing. You were saying that as marketing, that some companies will say, I need help with marketing. And you come into this company and you're like, no, you don't need help with marketing. You have a leadership issue and you need to handle this first. Marketing is the symptom of a deeper issue. Talk to me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the early days of Ugly Mug marketing, probably the first 3 years, I struggled to keep the doors open. And the reason was this: people would come to me, or I would go to them with marketing things that I thought they needed,
Mhm.
and they didn't think they needed those things. So, instead, I was trying to convince them that they needed this thing. And instead, I didn't listen to actually what they wanted. And so finally, I got to the point where, like, out of desperation, like I've got bills to pay, I was like, the next time someone says they want something, marketing related, I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to figure it out. If I don't know how to do it, I will figure it out. And then what I'll do is I'll actually help give them what they truly need. Right. And so for us, so often people come to us because they say they want, a new website, or they want help with social media, whatever the thing may be. But in reality, most often marketing problems are merely symptomatic of other things taking place. And so we have to learn, what we've had to learn over the years is that we sell them what they want, right? We sell them the website, but then we have to give them what they truly need. And in doing that, it has given us a very unique perspective into literally hundreds of different industries where we've had the inside perspective on, what is taking place behind the curtain, if you will. What is taking place that the customers can't see? How are they operating? How, does the team actually want to show up for work every day? Do they hate showing up for work every day? Like, what does all that look like? And then how can we add value and help transform those cultures, even though that's not why we're there?
Yeah, exactly. And I think being somebody who's business to business, who works inside companies and sees and I mainly work with the leaders of the companies. And that's one of the things I see as well is you can tell a lot about a company by the leadership, and it's not a judgment. It's just, there's some things I see from the outside based on experiences that really help to be able to give me a clear picture of how to be a better leader. I think I say this, everyone is an example. Some people are an example of what to do. People are an example of what not to do, but they're all very good examples. And I think we can all bring back something from them. And so I think it's a really interesting perspective that we have where we can walk in and just be able to, not from a business consultant standpoint. I think there's a different interaction that we have as service providers or as providers of services, that we see it really for how it is, not somebody kind of coming in and saying, I'm going to, if you have a business consultant come in, often people will be on their best behavior. They know they're being watched. It gets there's some paranoia involved. With us, we're just the vendor that comes in and does our thing. So I think it's a different viewpoint.
Yeah. One of the most empowering and frightening questions that I've learned to ask, and I try to teach other leaders to ask, is what's it like to be on the other side of me? So we approach the world obviously through our own lens, right? We are right. We make decisions because they're the right things to do. But what is it like on the other side? What is it like for the other people that are interacting with me? Years ago, we had someone come to us and they wanted help with marketing. They were opening a new restaurant location, and they came to us and they were like, we want y'all to do all the rollout, to do all the stuff. It would have been a fabulous contract for us. And, it was a really cool brand, really cool concept. But the problem was when we went to Google and looked at the Google reviews for the restaurant, they were rated like 3.2 out of 5 stars. And so I go back to them, and a very awkward conversation. I said, look, we would love to work with you. We would love to help you roll this out, but there's some other issues that we need to help address first. Like, you don't have to use us, but like, we have to address, like, the reality is you think you're a 5-star restaurant, but the world doesn't see it that way. The world sees you as a 3.2-star restaurant. So we need to address these issues. And I wish I could tell you that everything worked out wonderfully and we handled all the marketing, but sometimes, and this is true for us, there are things that other people can see that we simply cannot see. There's actually a psychology thing here called the Johari window. And it basically says that there are things that are unknown to us, but are known to other people. And for me, that is why it's so important for me to surround myself with people who are willing to tell me the truth. Because when you're the leader, when you're the boss, people typically don't tell you the truth. Your words have so much power and so much authority that people don't often speak the truth to you. They agree with you oftentimes, even if they disagree with you, right? Because you're the boss, quote unquote, you know best. And so it's so important that we surround ourselves with people who are willing to challenge us, who are willing to call us out when necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is true. I think we need that in general in our lives. I have those friends, I'm, pretty sure you have those friends as well, where it's the ones that will tell us, well, I know you want to hear this, but here's what you need to hear. It's kind of like what you were talking about with marketing. I'll give you what you want, but you might want to hear this. You really need this. This is where we're at. And for me, those friends have a very special place in my life, and I have a massive amount of respect for them because they're willing. And I see that as a level of respect for me. They respect me enough to say something versus kind of stepping back and going, Yeah, you do you, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that accountability culture, and I think that's something that you mentioned something about building a high performance culture and a self accountable culture, and I think that that's, you know, politely calling somebody out on something and saying, well, I think this is different, here's how I see this, is a part of that too, right?
100%. Yeah. It's all about getting alignment around what matters most. And then for entrepreneurs, once we get alignment, I see this mistake. Entrepreneurs want people to go do their job, right? You go do your thing, but then the people come back and we're frustrated because they didn't do it the way we wanted it, or they didn't do it the way we would have done it. And so step number one is simply this: we have to get crystal clear alignment around what matters most. And
Mhm.
the words I'm about to say, when I say these words, people automatically tune them out and they're like, yeah, I'll get to that. But we have to get clear on our vision, our mission, our values, and our expectations. We have to ensure that everyone is aligned around these things. And I will tell you this: a good friend of mine, he owns a business. They have about 800 employees, and
Mhm.
he's the co-founder and the CEO of the company. And he tells me that his actual title should be CRO, Chief Reminding Officer, because
Mhm.
his job is to remind people where we're going, which is the vision, why it matters, which is the mission, and then how we're going to get there, which are the values, the guideposts that show how we're going to get to that place. And so if you focus on those things, you can then grant the autonomy, the freedom for your team to go execute, to use their gifts and abilities on their own without you having to micromanage.
Absolutely. Huh. I love that. And it, there are a lot of people I want to say that to because I've seen it. And for me, it gets frustrating because I see them bashing their head against the wall. Things aren't going right. They're not happy. Their team's not happy. And it turns into this just massive issue. But instead, you know, it's one of those, this one small change would change that. This one small mindset change would change that entire thing because as you know, as the leader of a company, as the CEO of a company, for the team that works around me, I leave them in a better condition than I found them. And it's not about me. It's about I'm the visionary for the company. It's about the people around me who are helping me to build that. It's really about them and helping them to become not only the best version of themselves, but also, you know, hold me accountable. I hold them accountable. There's a, you know, I'm still the leader of the company and I'll make the decisions for it. That's my lane. But you know, I listen to the people around me. And when I haven't seen that formula work out, when I haven't seen people do that, that's when things start to go very badly. So yeah, I wanted to make sure we had a chance to chat about that because I think it's a really interesting viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. So as we're coming kind of to the end of things, I do have one question that I ask every person, and that is, what is one book or podcast that you can recommend to the audience that they can take away that has had a significant impact on your life?
So the first thing I would say to that question is this: that books have changed my life.
Mhm.
I was not a reader growing up. I probably graduated from both high school and college without ever having completely read an entire book, right? I did the bare
Yep.
minimum to pass the test. Never was a reader, but reading books, listening to podcasts has changed my life. So that's my preface to what I'm about to say. So the book that I'm going to recommend is a book called The Mountain Is You, and it's about overcoming self-sabotage. I
Mhm.
see this time and time again in the entrepreneurial journey, that we think we need to be studying marketing and leadership and all these things that we can and should be studying. And I'm all in favor of studying those things. But oftentimes we end up sabotaging ourselves. And this book really deals with that. It's a phenomenal book. Brianna Weist is the author of that book.
Interesting. Good to know. Thank you so much for that, man. And thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for dropping a bunch of wonderful wisdom. Really appreciate it, Wayne.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I've enjoyed our chat.
Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Wayne, check out the link in the description.